Hello and welcome to Common Ground, an inside look at Suffolk County. I'm Seth McCoy and we have a special show for you tonight. On this episode, we will devote a full hour to breaking down the September 9th primary election results and take a look at the races continuing on to the November final. Joining us to talk about the election results are political strategist and a member of the Massachusetts Women Political Caucus, Joyce Ferriabough, as well as Larry DiCara, a former Boston City Councilor and partner at Nixon Peabody. Stay tuned. Joining me now, Joyce Ferriabough and Larry DiCara. We're going to, of course, be talking about all of the election results from last night. So, Joyce, Larry, thank you for being on the show.
Great to be here.
Pleasure to have both of you, both experts about elections. So let's get right into it because we have a lot to talk about. First, let's talk about the governor's race. For the Democratic Party, we had three people on the ticket: Don Berwick, Martha Coakley, Steve Grossman. Larry, were you surprised at how close that race became between Steve and
I think
Martha?
most people were surprised. It was a little closer than most of the polls suggested. A lot of us thought that if Berwick had not been on the ballot, it would have been neck and neck. It may not have been neck and neck if Berwick had not been on the ballot. Berwick supporters in Jamaica Plain, where I live, and elsewhere across the state were fervent. They didn't blink, they didn't budge, they stuck with them. And when you have a three-person fight, 42, 43%, you can win.
Yeah. Joyce, who do you think Don took votes away from? Was it more from Grossman or Coakley?
I don't know. I think he probably took more away from Grossman. That's my feel on it. I also think it was just such a deadly boring race. I've never seen a race as boring. You know, for so much at stake, you know, the first woman, you know, nominee, and it just didn't spur people to go to the polls. A couple of the races did.
Right. Well, I think it's difficult coming off of Governor Deval Patrick, who was really great at energizing people in both of his elections. And maybe that was the problem, is that, you know,
The energy.
Exactly. No disrespect to any of the three candidates, but they didn't really bring that sort of energy.
It was 300,000 fewer people voted
I
than
know.
in 2006. I ran statewide
Sad.
in '78, and I got 231,000 votes. We remember
Yeah,
these
yeah,
things, right, Joyce?
yeah.
And I was about 30%, so
Right.
that was like 850,000
I
people
know.
voted, and there were fewer people in Massachusetts in
Right.
'78. So it was a very ghastly low turnout,
Mm-hmm.
and when the turnout is low, obviously, small numbers of people impact the result.
Absolutely. And I think that's something that we need to talk about too, is just how voter turnout, just in my opinion, and I don't know if you two would agree, it just continues to go down and down. People are so disinterested in what's happening. It's mind-boggling to me.
Well, it's like a microcosm of the nation. I mean, you've got, you know, Congress, you know, at odds with each other. You know, the president can't get things through. You know, people see that. After a while, you get voter fatigue. You say, what's in it for me? You know, my son, who's a poli-sci major, poli-sci and business, I said to him, I said, look, you know, you've got to vote. He says, oh, God, none of them, you know. I said, well, wait a second, Bruce, they do. He said, oh, you know. But all I'm saying is that, you know, we've got to do something. And I don't know exactly what it is, but, you know, young people in the next generation, they're just not here.
Right, and I actually had one of my friends yesterday send me a message on Facebook saying, I don't know who I want to vote for. She had one person that she knew that she was definitely going to vote for, but in all the other races, she had no idea. And this is somebody, mind you, who is active. You know,
She's
so
not the only one.
Right.
If in fact you put the names of the three candidates for lieutenant governor and Ray Rice's name on the screen,
Right.
Ray Rice would have had much higher visibility
Absolutely.
than anybody running for lieutenant governor,
Yep.
and that's very unfortunate.
Right.
But a lot of it is generational. I call them the quadrennial millennials. They vote once every 4 years.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's a wonderful thing. I think it's important to vote for president. But let's face it, folks, whoever the Democrat is going to win Massachusetts big. And waiting in line for 3 or 4 hours in the dark and the cold
It's not doing
to vote for president is not as important as voting for your state rep or your city
Right.
councilor.
But really, there were some races that were breakout races, even in a state of boredom. Maura Healey was one of them.
Right.
I mean, she reminded me, of Obama, of DeVal, of Senator
Warren.
She had that. You can't describe it. She had that
The
thing.
it. It's
She
it.
had the it. She had
Yeah.
the it. And a Moulton. I mean, he's not in my district, but Jesus, when I saw,
A boy named Seth.
oh
Imagine
my
that.
God, when I saw the old guy saying, this is what we did, and I'm going to be voting for Seth. That's all I really needed to see. 4 tours of duty, and the guy has every MBA and every degree at Harvard there is, and he's 35, and he says at the end, he says, I'm here because the guy who I'm running against, I was only 6 years old when he was in.
Right.
So, people want something new.
Yeah.
I really think that we're, in some occasions, people want the experience, they want the folks who know. That's all changed. It's changing.
Right. They want to be inspired. They want to have a reason to
That's
actually
right.
go out to the polls. And unfortunately, the 3 candidates on the Democratic ticket didn't really spur that in a lot of people. Obviously, Martha Coakley is going to move towards November. She's going to be facing Charlie Baker. And Jeff McCormick, we can't forget, there's an independent on the
sure,
ballot.
Jeff.
Falchuk.
And
Second
Falchuk,
independent.
too.
Right.
Yeah,
Falchuk,
2
yeah.
independents, yeah.
So
McCormick is better funded, but
Right,
there'll be 2
exactly.
names to the ballot. And that can be very quirky.
Right.
Tough
It
to
can
tell
be.
where those votes come from.
Right.
You would think that McCormick's votes come from Baker, but there's no certainty, and Falchuk's could come from Coakley.
Right.
And I don't know either of them, by the
Yeah.
way. I know Baker, I know Coakley quite well.
Yeah.
I don't know either of them. People tell me they're nice men. And you also then have 1 woman, 3 males.
right.
Right.
And that's a variable.
Well, and that's an important point to make because we actually have women across the board and all
Oh,
for
4 out of
wonderful.
6.
Yep,
I
governor.
mean, in the early 80s, when I was much
there
more
ever?
active in the business, though there'd never been a woman in statewide office. I think
Okay.
Evelyn Murphy was
That's
the
right.
first one.
That's
Yeah.
right.
And now we have 4 out of 6.
Four
This
out
is
of 6.
amazing. It's amazing. It's amazing opportunity. As Seth, you may know, I'm a board member of the Mass Women's Political Caucus, and geez, I mean, we only vote for women, of course. We only work for women.
Not even really nice men.
I think
Not
one
even.
time they voted, and I wasn't on at that time. One time they changed for Weld, and I have to tell you, I mean, I wouldn't, sort of count Charlie Baker out. I think that
Well, his running mate is a woman, Karen
she's
Polito.
a woman who I respect very highly. And also, I have to say this about Charlie. If it were not for Charlie and Weld, there wouldn't have been a Mass Alliance, which my husband was the head of. And they had the most diverse cabinet of anyone, including our current governor. So if that's any indication, he's got a lot to be able to roll, out
Right.
to
The
say,
other
and he's done a
advantage
lot better.
Charlie has is that he really had no significant primary. He's
Right.
sitting on a bundle of money.
Right.
Bundle
He has a lot of friends because he's been around the track before.
across the
Yeah.
lines
I mean,
too.
Romney certainly was a much better candidate when he ran for governor than when he ran against Ted
Absolutely.
Kennedy. And Charlie Baker, I've seen him at meetings, is a far more relaxed person than he was when he was so uptight
Oh,
and
yeah, oh,
into
yeah.
crunching numbers and things like that.
Right.
I think it's a strong field. I think it's not a slam dunk, even in a heavily Democratic state.
That's right.
53% of the people in Massachusetts are unenrolled,
Yeah.
and that means they can go either way. So I think it's a jump ball.
It is.
How do you think either of any of the candidates can do in Boston in terms of really breaking into different neighborhoods, and what should they be trying to do in order to get people to
Boston's
go
a
out and vote?
heavily Democratic city. It has been as far back as anyone can remember, and the real challenge is to get people out to vote.
Yeah.
If the turnout in Boston is 150, then the Democrat will probably have a margin of 50. If the turnout is 200, then the margin could be 75. So that it's important to get the vote out. And I expect that Martha Coakley and Mayor Walsh have spoken already today.
Yes, I'm sure.
And I expect that's a conversation
He was-
that will be held.
Mayor Walsh was actually out with Maura Healey first thing this morning.
Yeah,
So,
good.
you
Because
know,
he was
he's-
with
he
Tolman.
yeah,
Right.
he's with Warren Tolman.
Yeah, yeah.
So they've obviously started the next chapter. There was a unity rally this
Right,
morning
10
with
o'clock.
absolutely 10 o'clock with all the Democrats who had been on the ticket and won, or
I've been to those, and let me tell you, your face hurts from smiling
I know.
after a while, but it's still very important.
right?
And I tend to think we stick together, and it's very important to be a Democrat. I speak as a Democrat, as the governor of the Commonwealth, but there's a smaller and smaller percentage of us who identify with a political party.
Right.
That's the lowest in the percentage in the history of the Commonwealth. As recently as the 80s, when Dukakis was governor, the number of people who identified as Democrat was 44, 45%. It's
right.
now in the mid-30s.
That's right. And I got to tell you something. I think, and I'm not speaking for any one candidate, but that Charlie Baker is able to cross some lines because I'm hearing fundraisers for him among friends of mine all over the state, and they're people of color. You know, whether it's, you know, Martha's Vineyard, Sharon, you know, in Dorchester he's been, so he's like not taking anything for
Charlie
granted.
Baker has a lot of signs in Dorchester.
Oh, I know, all up and down Morton Street. Have you
Right.
ridden it? Yeah.
Yep,
So-
he's working it really hard.
Yeah, and that's something that Martha is going to have to do as well, is really get out there and show
Well, she's
people.
changed up. I worked in her campaign when she ran for Senate, and unfortunately, they decided to reach out to minority communities late in the game, even though people were telling, because I was on her finance committee, were telling her whenever she does something to make sure that whatever area, New Bedford, or that she connects with the community there. And what was happening was she would go there, and if there was no time, she wouldn't visit anybody from the New Bedford community. Well, the minority community is the most, you know, you can count on them to be Democrat than anything. So
When they show up.
that's right.
And
Well,
the more
they
they
show up,
the
and
more
that's a,
Democratic it is.
that's
And,
true.
and let's talk too, Latinos.
Mm-hmm.
Huge number
Huge.
of Latinos
Right.
getting out and voting in each and every election, and that actually could be what tips the scale in either
Absolutely.
direction.
Oh, absolutely. It did
You have
for
the national
Elizabeth
issues
Warren.
there, the immigration issues.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of folks are turned off, but enormous numbers. I mean, Bush 43 got a lot of Latino votes.
Right.
He did.
And
Well, that's
I'm not
because
sure
one of his
why, but he did.
Well, one of his
His brother-in-law,
yeah,
sister-in-law,
was married
Columba.
to, right.
Yeah, Columba's
So,
Mexican,
you
I
know,
think.
but in this case, you know, you're going to have to get out here on the stump and talk about the issues that are important to them,
Right.
because it's a lethargic race.
Absolutely.
And if you want to energize folks in any community, you've got to connect to the things that they care about.
And one thing that happened in this election, I cannot prove it. My guess is that the turnout among people who identified themselves as gay and lesbian was higher percentage-wise than the turnout
Oh, I
among
bet.
people who identified themselves as labor union members.
right,
That's-
right.
yeah.
And
And that is, you know, and when people come out to vote, they impact the election. Plain and simple.
Exactly.
Whether they're black people, white people, tall people, short people, liberals, conservatives, whatever it is.
Well,
Right.
Larry, weren't you? I was pretty surprised. I mean, Steve Tolman heads the AFL-CIO, and yet Mara cleaned Tolman's clock
Right.
2-1. That was
That was a complete surprise.
You know,
we all knew it
what
was going to
happened?
be.
Yeah.
We all knew it was going to be neck
Al
and neck.
Smith,
mayor,
Al
the
Smith,
governor?
Yeah, Al Smith used to say, the only time the Irish stand together is at the reading of the gospel. Okay,
And at the wakes.
Labor is not monolithic.
No.
That's true.
26, 1199, these unions with enormous numbers of people, a lot of them are not citizens.
Right.
They work, they pay taxes, but they cannot vote.
Right.
Construction workers, the guys I grew up with, cops and firefighters, they're members of unions.
Right.
Some of them are to the right of Attila the Hun.
Oh,
Right.
God.
They haven't voted for a Democrat for president in years.
Maybe
Right.
call them
And the public
Republican.
employees are usually reliably Democratic, but there's not as many of them as there were
Right.
because of all the budget cuts.
Exactly.
There's
So
really
it's
a
not
sea change.
monolithic.
It really
Not
is.
Right.
monolithic.
And so I think Maura obviously gained from that, as did Steve Kerrigan. So you have two gay candidates, and they're pulling out the vote.
Well, you
from
may as well
places.
call Steve Kennedy.
Yeah,
Steve
exactly.
I mean, he's like, you know, as soon as, you know, folks heard he was running, I mean, not that, I don't know, I couldn't prove that the Kennedys were behind him, but, you know, they love him. I
Right.
mean, he's like a family member.
Right, and he's a hard worker, though. I
Very
was
much.
saying to somebody else that every time I turned around, I saw Steve Kerrigan, and truth
That's
be
all he
told,
did.
right,
That's all he's
exactly.
done for months.
And I only saw Mike Lake a couple of times. I only saw Leland Chung a couple of times.
Yeah.
But literally, every time I turned around, Steve Kerrigan was there.
Yeah, I'll tell you, he had a machine behind him. He was everywhere.
Yeah.
And, you know,
And
Leland.
why he wants to be lieutenant governor is a whole other
Well,
discussion.
well, let's talk about that.
Well, that could change.
Let's talk about that
Yeah.
because, of course, the Boston Globe endorsed Leland, but in their endorsement, I mean, talk about, imagine Leland Chung waking up and being like, oh my gosh, I got the Boston Globe, and because the end was such a slap, talking
I
about
know.
how useless that office is and how the three of them, none of them had any talent or anything really to bring to the table, and they should just do away with the office in general. Is that something that we should be thinking about? Do we need a lieutenant governor?
I think we need a lieutenant governor doing something other than what the normal lieutenant governor does.
Whatever that is.
Right.
Okay, I mean,
Governor's
you
Council.
had Lieutenant Governor Tim. I think he took on homelessness and he took
Veterans
on
issues.
veterans
Right.
issues.
A lot of effort.
Yeah, I think that you've got to put something to it. It just can't be like a figurehead, like.
Ceremonial.
And I think that rather than kind of slamming it and saying it's a no, nothing, we need all the help we can get. Let's kind of construct it a little bit differently so that it really does something to help the citizens of Massachusetts.
Right.
That's what I think. That's just my opinion.
Larry?
Mike Dukakis asked me to run for lieutenant governor in 1973. I was 24 years old, and I respectfully declined. And we'll leave it at that.
And that's what he thinks of that. Let's go over the numbers, though, for lieutenant governor. So Leland came in at 29%, Mike Lake at 20%, and Steve Kerrigan a whopping 51%. So he really, as I said, was everywhere and got his message out. And whether the
And he had
Kennedys
the
were
most money.
behind, yeah.
And he spent it.
But let me also say that, to be honest, did you think Leland would get as much as he got? I think he did pretty well, coming in second and a distant second.
Right.
But
I thought that Mike Lake would be
me
second.
too. Me too.
So that was surprising. Mike Dukakis endorsed Mike
oh
Lake.
yeah. Oh yeah.
And I figured that
That's
would help
why.
him. Yeah.
So Leland didn't do too bad.
No, and I think a lot of people during the campaign thought Leland was going to drop out earlier because he wasn't getting any traction.
We
And
kept
so
saying
just-
who?
Right.
Leland.
It's very tough when you run for those offices. I've been there, done that.
Yep.
Very few people know who you are. It becomes
They
a
don't
very
pay attention to the
difficult-
office.
very
It must be
difficult.
very frustrating, too, to be a candidate, to be shaking hands and have people looking at you like,
I ran for treasurer in 1978. There were 6 people in the ballot. I came in second. I was president of City Council. I'd been acting mayor during the blizzard. I'd run citywide 4 times. I'd spent, in the equivalent of today's dollars, about $1 million in the course of a year. And I stood in Quincy all day long. I went back to Dorchester to vote, have lunch, go to the bathroom. Then I came back to Quincy. Remember like we were yesterday. Half the people had absolutely no idea who I was or what I was doing.
Wow.
right.
And that was a high-profile race with cartoons in the Globe and angry op-ed pieces. And so I expect that, as I said, I'd say it not completely in jest, if you said Kerrigan, Chung, Lake, Ray, Rice, more people would know Ray Rice
Right.
than know any of those 3.
Yeah.
Well, and
Which is tragic, but the reality
It is
the truth.
tragic. And the other thing is, I think that beyond getting people out, I think that there's been just so much reporting on, the parole, probation, corruption, this corruption, money taken from lobbyists and why don't you give it back?
Right.
It just muddles. Who wants to touch it? It's so dirty.
Right, not talking about the issues. And some of the people who go in to vote might just have no idea. It depends on who hits them on the way in with a palm card. And they see that name and,
And then that's it.
all right, I'll vote
I
for
gotta
that
tell
person.
you, I didn't know who I was going to vote for, honest to God, until I walked into my voting booth. Seriously.
You're not the only one.
I had a few in mind, but I did go in and,
I mean, for governor, I'll
Right,
say for
yeah.
governor. I knew I was voting for Mara, and I knew I was voting,
Yeah.
my local folks,
Yeah.
but for governor, did not know till I got
yeah, I got to say, just going back to that race, Don Berwick really stood out in that last debate. And you
in. Too
almost,
bad he didn't do it in the beginning.
Exactly. You almost wish, he had,
He had extraordinary support in Jamaica Plain.
right.
He sure
Berwick.
did.
Yeah.
I mean, he had Sonia Chang Diaz's endorsement. He had a lot of folks, grassroots, for him. I'm like shocked that I think he stopped Grossman from winning, frankly. That's,
Right.
my feeling.
Well, then let's talk about Dawn a little more. Let's say Charlie Baker and Karen Polito win the race in November. Is that something that Don Berwick should sit back and say to himself, you know what, I'm going to go at this again in 4 years, start running January 1?
Don't know. I mean, not
Too
so
soon to tell.
Not so sure it's there.
Right.
It's a bad disease. I've had it.
I know. Do you miss
Runs
it?
in the
Do you
bowling
mi-
family.
I know too.
so
Do you miss
Trust
running
me.
for office?
Some days I do, but tonight I won't. But some days I do.
Well, because we should start off with Larry and ask him, let's start with the offices you didn't run
Right.
for.
Right, exactly.
But it's, there's an energy involved.
Yeah.
But what will happen to Don Berwick, maybe tomorrow, maybe Friday, maybe next Monday, the phone will stop ringing.
Right.
All the staff people will not be there to do all the things the staff people do.
Yep.
And he's going to have to get back to the rest of his life. And let me tell you, it is
He's got an
difficult.
incredible life, though,
Yeah.
already.
Right.
All sorts of interesting
oh,
things.
God, worldwide.
The same for Steve Grossman. You
Yeah,
just got to
wait,
dust yourself
well,
off.
Right. I mean, Steve at least has another job to
a
go
business,
to.
yep.
But you think about all the people who work for him who are, some of the folks will, when the new treasurer comes in, may not be there. And so those are the things you have to think of when you're running for office
Yeah.
as well.
It was when Marty became mayor, and some people who worked for Tom Menino were no longer employed. One of my, I got a phone call from one of my friends. Did you see what happened to so-and-so with it? He lost his job. I said, there's a new mayor.
Absolutely.
That's
the
what
new mayor has
happens.
his own people.
And,
Okay?
and you know what? Usually they come in and say, everybody, give me your resignations.
Sure.
Right.
At least he was nice enough not to do that. I think he
Yeah.
did cherry-picked a little bit because
I
you
mean,
didn't read it,
It's a tough business.
Yeah, it's a very tough business. The other thing, when we're talking about campaigning for the candidates, there's that time, like you said, in a couple days, that phone's going to stop ringing. And there is sort of this like, oh, what do I do now? There's, I don't want to say depression, but there's this sort of like, you've been on this high this whole time, and then all of a sudden you're just done.
Yep.
So it's a transition back into normal living.
I talk about it in my book. I went from being a candidate for state treasurer and city council president with a large staff of my own, because the president has the bigger
Yep.
office, the bigger staff, just like Bruce did, and the central city council staff. So I
Right.
had 40, 50 people
Yep.
working for me down to 2
Right.
in the course of a couple of months. Let me tell you, that's tough.
Yeah.
It is tough.
That's tough.
Definitely. Let's finish talking about lieutenant governor's race. So Karen Polito, we've already talked about her. She was uncontested. She's obviously the
Let
nominee.
me say something about Polito, who I've never met.
Yeah.
Not only is Polito a woman, she's an Italian woman, and she's an Italian woman from Worcester County. And
Big plus.
Republicans
Right.
do a better job of balancing their tickets than Democrats do.
Right.
And that's
do.
because there's so few of them. I'm not saying they could have their
No.
state convention in this room, but it doesn't require a big room for them to get
Right.
together.
Somebody said to me, however, that where Charlie Baker is more of a moderate, Karen is completely,
That's what
To the
people tell me. But
Right.
the
I
average,
don't think so.
the average
I
voter's not necessarily going to know that.
Right.
And Republican strategy has been for 2 generations to get the Yankees and the Italians together.
Yes.
It's worked.
That's true.
Volpe and Sargent.
absolutely.
And all the-
Salucci.
Salucci and
Yeah.
Swift,
Yeah,
Weld
yeah.
and Salucci. It works.
Right.
And she's a tremendous asset to him because, his new image is softened.
Right.
And her, Melanie's Law, just any number of things that she's, done. She's very accomplished. I think very highly of her.
And the
very
Republican
highly.
strategy requires winning everything in Worcester County except for the city and not losing the city
That's
by
right.
much.
That's a
And she's going to work Worcester
to
tough.
de-
the
she's
bone.
going to get Worcester.
She's
Well,
gonna
it'll be
work hard
interesting
in
to
Worcester.
see also Charlie Baker, Martha Coakley in a debate, and Karen Polito and Steve Kerrigan in a debate, and see how they play off each other, how the
'Cause
questions
Steve's
are.
never run for office before.
Right.
That's true.
So it'll be
And she's tough.
Yeah.
I
But the
mean,
Democratic ticket, on the other hand, is mighty green,
right.
okay?
That's right.
It's Coakley, Kerrigan, Healy, and Galvin,
Yep.
That's right.
okay?
I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, I think
Galvin
about
is
these
not.
things.
He's not that green.
Yeah. No,
know.
green in the sense of Irish.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Now, those things,
That
those
green.
things are not as
Not
important.
environmental.
No,
Those
No,
things
we-
are not as important
Well-
as they used to be, but nevertheless,
Right.
because the Republicans can put their ticket together,
Yep.
almost like they're in a room
Yeah.
with a strategy, a border strategy, doing it, they're able to push some of those buttons. And Charlie Baker didn't only pick Karen Polito for the reasons that he might say. He picked her because it balances the ticket.
Oh, absolutely. And let me just say another thing about, we talked a little bit about women and, this being, woman-dominated. First time in a very long time. There's got to be a little strategy around that, too, because none of these women who are very accomplished are going to want to be pushing the gender button because only. I mean, it's obvious who they are, but it's what they bring to the table. And I'd love to see the party, the Democratic Party, who gave their all to Grossman, which was a shock to me. Because generally they would stay out of it. But boom, they put it all behind Grossman. I'd like to see what their strategy is when they have to push a number of women now, and what they haven't had to do in the past.
Well, I was talking last night on Joe Heisler's show about this being the year of the woman, and while the candidates themselves might not want to focus on the fact that they are women, even though it's obvious to us all, the media, however, might turn it into.
Oh yeah, sure they will.
This is
4 out of 6.
Right.
Yes.
Either way.
Right.
Either way, it's 4 out of 6.
Right.
Assuming that, with all due respect, the Republicans for the lower offices are not going to contest.
Right.
So it's either Polito or Coakley, one or the other, because they run in a ticket.
That's true.
And the other 3. I mean, it's extraordinary.
It is
And I have 3 daughters. It's a good thing.
I know.
And they're looking at that.
They're
And
looking at
we
that.
already
They can do
we
whatever
have,
they want to do.
Yeah.
I tell my girls, you can do whatever you want to do. There are no barriers, and that's not necessarily the message that my mother had growing up or that you didn't have
That's
growing
right.
up.
That's right.
And that is a wonderful message to young women across Massachusetts.
And a wonderful message to young men in Massachusetts
Too.
and boys.
And see,
to
that's
see
what I
strong women.
mean. Actually, I think that this is an opportunity for a message to be crafted that men aren't saying, "Oh, that's a woman. Let's only vote for a man," but that a woman can carry forth very competently issues that impact whole families, issues that impact men as well. I think if the media, whoever gets into that little nitpicky stuff about the women, it just doesn't move us forward as a nation. And I'm really excited about this whole race because so many women are, and let's not forget about Deb Goldberg is there. I know we said 4, but the lower races that
Suzanne Bump.
Yes, Suzanne Bump is already in there. So this is just so exciting. It's really exciting. Exciting time for
Too
women.
bad Polly Logan's no longer with us.
I know,
Because
Polly. I
nice
love Polly. Even a
nice
Republican,
Republican,
I love
but she's
her.
a nice Republican.
She was a nice Republican. Crossing the line. I think you're going to see a lot of crossing the lines.
Right, and this means for the MWPC, you guys will be busy.
Oh yeah, we're going to actually. We're always on the ground.
Right.
Seriously, we give money. We do phone calls. We do be in campaigns. We help pitch in where we don't do the whole thing. We pitch in. We get interns in who want to work in campaigns, and that's really important for women because remember, just last year was a war on women.
Yes, yes, indeed.
And still in some areas, if you go to Brookline, it's a place there still is a little war going on.
Absolutely, and I would be remiss if I did not mention Angus Jennings, who I interviewed here on this program.
Very
and
smart.
He's a very smart guy, very
likable. And I worked
likable.
together on Smart Growth. Very smart guy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Very, very likable guy. We've talked about the Attorney General's race, but we can certainly talk about it a lot more because, of course, this was the race to watch, as we've indicated earlier. Maura Healey, Warren Tolman. Warren Tolman had the support of everybody under the sun and did not manage to pull it out. Maura blew him away 62% to 38%. Joyce, I know that you were with Maura. Were you shocked that?
Well, I knew she was going to clean his clock.
Yep.
Sorry to say it
That's
like
all right.
that.
Okay.
And I sort of know him a little bit. And I knew from DOMA, I knew from other, civil rights kinds of things. I knew her name from there, but I'm just talking, the woman walks into the room and she's like lights up the room, and everybody wants to come out of the door.
Extraordinarily dynamic woman.
Very dynamic.
She called me up and I said, listen, I've known Warren Tolman since he was in high school. He was my student. We both had a full head of hair. That's how long ago it was. And I'm with him. And he had all older,
Everybody.
bald white guys.
Everybody. Mayor Walsh,
I know.
pretty much
Wait a
every
minute. The Governor Patrick. I mean, when Governor Patrick endorsed, you know, the emails were flying, and we're like, okay, we got to get out here. I said, I'm going to send out 1,000 emails to communities of color,
Right.
Because we knew we had to kind of offset that a little bit, or we thought we did. But she was way out. I mean, the 15 points that they said she was ahead, you first thought, whoa, really?
She won in my ward, 9-5.
Yeah, she won everywhere
And we were surprised when Miguel, who's my better half, sent me a text with the numbers from our ward and precinct. I was like, wow. He was like, she blew it away here. And, and this was,
I
of course,
haven't seen the numbers in JP. I bet the numbers in JP were through the sky.
Yeah.
I bet.
And, you know, again, Warren Tolman was endorsed by pretty much everybody under the sun. Most of the Boston City Council backed him.
Everybody except Matt O'Malley.
Right. And Ayanna Presley.
Well, no,
Ayanna,
Ayanna didn't.
Okay.
She went with Mara, yeah.
Right. And so that was just a complete, I
2
figured.
out of 13.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, Miguel and I talked early yesterday, and we thought, well, she might not win Boston, but she'll win every place else. And then as the numbers were coming in, it was just, we were blown away. But like you said, Joyce, she just has it. When Maura walks into a room.
She just has that thing, you know, that star power. That's what I call it. It's Ayanna Presley. It's DeVal Patrick. Just star power.
Yeah, and nothing to take away from Warren Tolman, who is a great guy.
Very distinguished legislator.
Yeah,
right,
he is
great candidate. And that's what I said to a few people. I said,
wrong
you know,
matchup.
like either one would be great because they're both competent. They would both do a good job.
She just would be better.
Yeah.
And listen, I got to tell you something, you know. Again, you know, women who the caucus has endorsed and so forth, I mean, you know, we were saying, hey, listen, you know, we got to, as sisters, we have to stick together here. We have a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity here, you know. So I know that we worked hard. We were on the ground. We did a big press conference after the governor made his endorsement. And many of us tried to talk to the governor to ask him not to endorse it, you know. But you know, he got one. He got Martha.
Yeah,
you know. So.
Absolutely. And John Miller is the Republican on that ticket.
I don't know much about him.
Yeah, you can tell that none of us know much about the Republican Attorney General candidate, but Maura will go up against him in November, and
she should be fine.
She should be fine indeed. Let's talk about the treasurer's race. We had Barry Feingold, who came in at 32%, Deb Goldberg at 43%, and Tom Conroy at 26% for the Democratic ticket.
Remember, Deb had run statewide before.
She ran for lieutenant governor.
And when, we talked about it a few moments ago, so she had that experience that some of us have of when I walk into a town, you say, well, geez, so-and-so is the person to talk to, the person in that restaurant. You know that thing. So she was a step ahead. And Tom Conroy had one of the best dads.
I knew you were going to say that.
He has triplet daughters. And any man with triplet daughters is a saint. Any man with triplet daughters is a saint.
I know.
Well, and we should point out, because you talked about your daughters, but you did not stress that your daughters are triplets.
My daughters are 3 females born on the same day.
Yes.
And same for Tom Conroy. And I thought when I saw that ad,
you were going to vote
that could have been the Tim for treasurer ad.
Right.
Me too.
But it wasn't, because I don't think he had enough money to buy that much of it.
No.
Tim
Too
Cahill,
late. Too little, too
Tim
late.
Cahill now 12 years ago when he ran for treasurer.
And he did that early.
He did nothing except save his money for TV.
Right.
And he just, and daughter, you know, Tim for treasurer.
Yep.
And that's how he won.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, absolutely. But people
And
talked
of
about...
course, the state treasurer back when I was really small was a man named John F. Kennedy.
Wow.
Who worked on the assembly line at Gillette.
Right, I was going to say, not the J.
Right.
He got elected 3 times.
There's so many Kennedys in Massachusetts,
I
people
know.
aren't sure which
So
one.
I
They'll
thought
tell
that
you.
perhaps Conroy might have caught fire.
No.
I don't think he had enough money to buy enough
right.
ads. But Deb had paid the dues,
my
been to the
God.
chicken suppers,
MBA,
all that kind of
tough,
stuff.
you know, really sweetheart. I'm so happy that she made it this time. And by the way, she ran for lieutenant governor quite a long time ago. You know, and it was, you know, kind of like she ran against, who was the woman? Andrea Silbert. And the caucus didn't make a decision then. It's something, and she was like furious with us. But there were two pro-choice women. They
Right.
both were like tough on the issues, and we kept having a split. What
Right.
could we do?
Right,
You know,
exactly.
so everybody was off to their own, you know, to help her rather than everybody putting the whole around her. So this time around, there was just no hesitation. I mean, when you looked at Barry, with all due respect, and the other guy,
Tom Conroy.
she was head over heels,
Right.
you know.
Well, let's talk about Barry Feingold for a minute, though, because he had an ad that featured Market Basket employees, which I think some people figured, oh, this might help him lift him up. However, I will say the end of the ad, the last guy who speaks, his comment was, I don't know what the treasurer does, but I know I'm going to trust him with my money, which I thought was the worst way to end an ad ever.
Wrong message all
Wrong
the way
message,
around.
I agree.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you why it was the wrong message all the way around. It looked like he was just taking advantage of this situation, which it's okay to take advantage of it. You just have to be able to message it in such a way that it doesn't look like it's self-aggrandizing.
Right.
And, you know, when you got that guy at the end talking about, I don't know what the treasurer does, for God's sake, you don't know what the treasurer does of a club. It's the same thing as he does for a state.
Right.
It was just a very bad ad, and I was hoping that he would change the ad, because I was like, doesn't he know he's like killing himself with that
Right.
ad? Whereas when Deb did her ad, soft, because she's strong.
Yes,
she's
she
very
is.
strong.
Much better than some of her advertising when she ran for lieutenant
Before, I
governor.
know the lieutenant governor
Yeah,
was
the
scary. Some of
stopping-
it,
the
yeah.
Stop and Shop and
Oh,
the
it
Shells
was,
ad
yeah,
was done good.
yeah.
So she learned.
Soft, yeah, she
People
did learn.
learn. I mean,
Well-
there's a moral of the story here that Maura Healey being the exception,
Yep.
usually people have to be in the trenches for a bit
Yeah.
to understand what mistakes you will make
Right.
and to make them when, in some cases, you're really young.
And that's something we
And
should
Moulton,
point out to
too.
people at home who might be watching who are thinking, well, maybe I'll run for office one day. Start wherever you might want to start, whether it's the city council or a state rep, state senator. You might lose the first time. Yeah, you might get lucky and win, but chances are you're going to lose. But the point is you learn from your mistakes on that campaign and run again until you get in, if you're really serious about making a difference and serving the public.
And I got to tell you, campaigning is very different nowadays. I mean, it's like, you know, all social media, and it's on a different level than, you know, when we were running people, you know, it's like, you know, telephones. Now it's not.
Index cards.
I know it's smartphones.
Well, let's jump ahead a little bit and talk about Patty Campitelli, who is an example of somebody who's using social media to her
Don't-
detriment.
Absolutely.
Oh.
You know, she had
What a shame.
a couple of incidents, one recently. I don't know if both of you
Yeah,
saw
yeah, the one that
the
she
Elizabeth
claimed.
Warren.
Yeah. And then she did the.
First of all, those jobs should not be elected.
Right.
That's a whole
I
lecture
agree.
unto itself. Felix Sr. will do fine.
He'll
but
bring dignity back.
He'll bring
to it.
dignity back. He's a gentleman.
He is.
She was an embarrassment.
Oh my gosh.
An embarrassment. My mother, God rest her soul, used to say that Pixie Palladino was an embarrassment to her as an Italian woman.
I
Right,
know,
right.
look at
And
that.
maybe I'm just, you know, giving my mother's speech here,
No,
but it's an embarrassment.
true.
Right.
And the probate office runs very well with the professionals who are there. Some bad things happened to her. I'm very sorry that they did. Felix will calm the waters. He's a very calming man.
Yeah, the
by
morale is
nature.
the morale has to be. I mean, who punches somebody in the
Yeah,
face after the Christmas party? For
Yeah.
God's sake,
Right.
it's like awful.
just-
And
just-
she was a neophyte. I don't
Yeah.
think she had ever run before.
No, she challenged Sal Almatina.
She
Everybody
beat
thought
him.
Sal was going to win.
Right.
He had
And
everybody
then-
with him.
And that was
Yeah.
a shocker. Not that we want to spend too much time focusing on that
Yeah.
race a few years ago, but that was another shocker where
was.
you thought that, oh,
Those
Sal's got
jobs
this.
should be appointed. They should be people
Absolutely.
who are expert.
Right.
You could get like a senior lawyer to do that
That's
Right.
job.
right. That's right.
Absolutely.
You
Let's
know,
go
it's-
back though to the treasurer's race because we didn't wrap up the Republican who will be on the ballot in November, Michael Heffernan, and Green Party, Ian Jackson. So, any
Heffernan,
Either
if
one.
he's related to the Heffernans from Needham, it's a big family, and that's all I can tell you.
Is he from Needham?
I think he's from Wellesley, so he could.
Okay,
raise
could
it.
very well be. Yeah.
Heffernan's had like 9 or 10 kids in Needham, big family.
do we have a guess as to who in the treasurer's
I
race
think it's a
will?
D.
Yeah.
I think it'll be Deb Goldberg. So that'll be good. Secretary of State, Bill
Bill
Galvin.
Galvin will be reelected.
He'll be there
Yeah.
for life.
Next,
We can skip over that.
my
office.
classmate.
State Auditor Suzanne Bump, as we mentioned, is the Democrat running for that office. Patricia St. Aubin is also on the ballot, as is MK Merlise, I don't know if I'm pronouncing her last name correctly.
Oh, another woman?
Yeah,
Yeah,
mean,
so
I
3
know
women.
that the Republicans contested that and spent a lot of money 4 years ago, or maybe 8, it all blurs after a while. I don't think they will this time. Suzanne will walk in.
Yeah, she will.
Yes,
Even despite the little hiccup going
Yeah.
on with her office. I'm sorry to hear.
and let's talk about a very important race, the Suffolk County Sheriff. You're
Listen,
this is
he did the
so,
work.
yeah.
He got the
sure
votes.
did.
Okay? I mean, the great thing is, and we get some battle scars, the two of us.
Yoda.
We are in a post-racial era in Boston. That is a very good thing.
Well, I don't know if I'd call it
Okay.
totally.
There
But
are some
the
issues that
fact-
still need to be worked
But
out.
no,
Thank
but
you.
seriously, the fact that Steve Thompson is a man of color is almost irrelevant to his being sheriff and the vote he got across the city.
Well, let me just say, let's look at.
Because he
it-
did the work.
He did the work, but let me just look at another thing. And this is, what I try to tell people when they say, well, I'm going to run, 4 people running against the incumbent, that's an automatic
Right.
stamp, like you're in. But again, you can't take anything away from Steve.
What, you get
Steve's-
58, 59% of the
He gets
vote?
61% of
In
the
Boston.
vote.
Right,
yeah.
that's a swamp, just like
Yeah.
Mara.
yeah.
And I think that also Steve's done the job. He's done great work on recidivism.
Yep.
He's done, he's been in the community. He's a face in the community. And he really worked hard. He didn't take anything for granted
He
in the
ran a
race.
citywide, countywide campaign.
Absolutely.
And I think that's, Joyce, what you were just referring to is his work, his day-to-day work is really what makes him stand out, because he has
That's
focused
true.
on these issues of not just having the jail be, sort of a revolving door of people coming in and out. He really wants to work at trying to get people out of that cycle and into a
And now
productive
he has
life.
a full term, and he
Right.
can do more.
And can I tell you that he had the endorsement of the unions there?
Right.
That's something no one had. Go even back to Rufo, who everybody has had a fight with that union.
Yeah, and so
He
that
had
says a
them
lot.
right across the board.
Yep.
And I know, the Herald and Howie Carr of Howie Carr Accounts called him, the PR guy. But his PR cred also helped him quite a bit because he knew how to, get out there and do his job. But again, he did the work, whether he's white, blue, or with green stripes.
Yeah.
He did the work, and he deserved to
And
that
I didn't see
spectacular
the
win.
statistics, but I expect his vote was strong in West Roxbury.
Oh,
It was
everywhere.
strong
Oh,
in
I
South
bet.
Boston, Charleston. Maybe.
Well,
That's what
that's-
I'm saying is different from 30, 40
4
years
Yeah,
years
and you
ago
know
when
what?
it was so territorial.
Exactly.
turf.
I was talking to somebody on the phone earlier who actually was working on the Tompkins campaign out in West Roxbury, and he said, we cleaned it here, so, he was
So
very
we now
happy.
have Ralph Martin, Andrea Cabral, Steve Compton. You now have a series of people of color who've been elected countywide
Yep.
with votes right across the board. That is a good message.
Sure, it is a good
It's a good
message.
Absolutely.
So we have fewer, as people of color, we have fewer, nuts to crack. Let's just put it that way. We still need to go for a couple of other offices of which we should be able to win. I'm not going to name them all because I don't want to hear the phone calls or the texts. What did you mean by that? Or any
Well,
of that.
and that goes back to what we were talking about earlier, is really looking at other people who might want to run and
Yeah.
mentoring them and
Yep.
how they should go about
Sure.
doing it.
Sure.
Absolutely. And there's going to be an independent on the ballot in November, Hassan Smith.
Good luck to Hassan.
Right.
Yeah,
I think
they'll
that
spend a lot of money.
Sheriff Tompkins is probably
The
safe,
one to
so.
beat.
Absolutely. Register of probate, we did just talk about this
Yep.
briefly, but let's go through the numbers here.
Felix won big. People know who he
50%.
is.
50%.
He's run citywide
Right.
a number of times, so is his son.
Yep.
I expect he will calm the waters. He will let the professionals do their job, and the office will run much better.
I thought that
Yes.
Marty Keogh would do a little bit better. He only got 18% of the
He
vote.
ran for city councilor
Yeah.
at one
Right,
time.
last
Yeah.
time, and then he
How much did he get?
18%.
Yeah.
Wow.
And he's from West Roxbury.
Yeah.
At
But-
least he got double digits, right? I mean,
Yeah, he did. John Sepulveda, by the way, who I had heard speaking at our ward meeting, 4% of the vote, but he had some really good ideas. So I'm hoping that, from what was happening on the campaign, that Felix will look at his competition and kind of see who out there had some good ideas that could be brought into the Register of Probate, because as you
it
mentioned,
needs to
it's
be. It definitely needs
very
to be.
important office, even though people sitting at home right now might be like, I have no idea what that
Sure.
is. But if you're, getting a divorce, or if you're adopting, or whatever it is, that's where you're going to be going
Yeah.
and getting. So getting your documents. For Suffolk State Senate, Linda Dorsina Forey, which
Superstar.
Absolutely.
she is
Superstar.
amazing.
Unlimited potential.
Yeah. Do you
How
think?
she can juggle all the kids and all the
Jesus, I
graduate
see her
degrees,
being governor one day.
beyond my comprehension.
Really, seriously.
She's a balanced ticket. I mean, she got it all.
She brings a lot of energy too. She's not, she's not very.
Energy is like a shot of
Yeah.
caffeine.
Oh my
I was about
God.
to
Having a
say,
conversation with her is like a shot
Yeah.
of caffeine.
Did you read that Boston Magazine piece? Well, I sent a text to
hysterical.
Billy, and I said, Billy, what did you think about the F word? And he says, oh, Jesus, they caught it too. I
Yeah.
catch it more than that.
Absolutely. She will be facing off against Robert Powers, but
think she'll be
clearly,
fine.
yeah,
I don't
Linda
know who he
is,
is.
pretty safe. Second Suffolk, this is my neck of the woods. Sonia Chang Diaz had Roy Owens, who went up against her.
Roy Owens may have run for office more times than I have.
He runs
Definitely
literally
more.
every single
Against
campaign.
everybody.
Yeah.
You ever hear him?
Oh my gosh, are you kidding me?
Oh my
I probably shouldn't say
God.
this now, but I have interviewed him. So
You have?
yes.
You're probably the only one who has.
Yes, well, we here at BNN, we like to be fair to all the candidates, so we have
Wow,
them
he
all
came
on.
in?
He came in, but Sonia's going to face off with David Wyatt, who he ran for city council last time as well. But
Was it city council or did he run for mayor? Was he the guy in the mayor race?
oh, maybe it was mayor. He ran
I
for
think it was in the
something.
mayor's
Yeah,
race.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
it's not going to happen.
No,
No,
so
forget
I,
him.
I think,
And he's a very anti-choice guy.
oh,
yes,
okay.
as is Roy
Big time.
Owens.
Yeah.
Both of them,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, second Suffolk state representative Dan Ryan against Roy Avalende. I can't even pronounce it.
Avellaneda.
Thank you.
The interesting thing there is that Charlestown is a smaller piece of that district than
That's
Chelsea.
right, that's
So
true.
this is the first time someone from Charlestown
Has won it.
won that
But
seat.
Dan has run for it before, right?
Right.
And he gets every vote out.
Yeah.
And he got 67% of
Right,
that
which
vote
means
out.
he got a lot of people in Chelsea
That's
to vote
true.
for him.
Yep.
Including a lot of Hispanic people.
Absolutely.
And I know
Had to.
Roy because of all my redistricting work through the years. His name's been on the ballot a lot.
Right.
It's a respected family in Chelsea.
And he was endorsed by the Globe the last time he ran, wasn't he?
So
he
this is
was
a serious candidate, but this means that, when we said before, if you do the work, what you look like doesn't make much difference.
That's
Right.
true.
Danny Ryan before was just the Charlestown guy.
Yep.
Now he's also the Chelsea guy. He's getting
That's right,
Spanish
has
folks to
to.
vote for him in Chelsea, or else he
Reaching
wouldn't have
out.
had
That's right.
67.
That's right.
Absolutely.
And that is also a good sign.
That's
Yeah.
a good sign, always a good sign.
Fifth Suffolk, Evandro Cavallo, who actually just got into office
got in.
on a special. Althea Garrison ran against him. She got 34%.
Althea has run for office more times
Everything.
than
Than
Roy
Roy
Owens.
Oh,
She's a pleasure to have, though, on the
she's a sweetie.
BNN,
She
so-
really is
She
a
believes
sweetie.
in what she's doing, and you have
Yeah.
to give her credit.
Yeah.
And she
Yeah.
gets her own signatures.
And you better
Yeah.
not make one false step, or she will sue you in a minute. Make you spend up all your money.
Evandro did very well, though, 66% of the vote. He's going to face off against Claudette Joseph.
Yeah, I wouldn't be
In
too,
November, but
I wouldn't be too worried about
right.
anybody with the Democratic.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. This is also my neck of the woods, 7th Suffolk State
Mine too.
Representative Gloria Fox, Eric Estevez, and Rufus Falk. Gloria, 50% of the vote.
But again, it's a matter of, you can see it there really very clearly. Two guys running, they split the vote up, 50-50.
Right.
Yep.
But, Gloria's been there for a very,
Paid
very
a
long
lot
time.
of dues.
Well, and that's an interesting thing to point out, Joyce, is that they did split the vote, and I wonder how it would have turned out if Rufus got behind Eric or Eric got behind
Well,
Rufus.
that's what we were saying, yeah, that's.
Eric
How
had a
would it-
lot of support.
Right.
Eric
He had
did have a
number
lot.
of people call me up, and I said, listen,
Right.
I've known Gloria Fox since before you were born.
That's right.
Okay?
Yeah.
And I'm with Gloria.
And
I've
you know
sent her a
what?
check.
And you know what? She's paid her dues. And, not only that, she deserves, it was almost like, it reminds me of the time when, Menino and Flaherty, Mike Flaherty, went up against Yancey. And, everybody who was anybody in the community, myself included, we were all in that room and we said, they're not going to take anything away from you. And he, won the race. I think, and I have to say this with, all due respect, I have a young son who's growing up, and that is, to the extent that we can mentor others, as you just said, Seth, behind them. I think Gloria's not going to be able to be there forever. I think she
Right.
must be in her 70s, big time now. And I think, her granddaughter, Giovanni, is extraordinary. And I think that we just have to mentor. There's other people in the community like Cheryl Crawford comes to mind. Chanel Parker
Yep,
over in the
Chanel, yeah.
Fenway. So there are some great people, and Eric too. And I'll tell you another person who's, really, I mean, we worked together on the city redistricting, finally got a map through, and that's, what's his name from the NAACP?
Michael Curry?
No, not Michael, but Michael would,
Right. Except he lives in Brockton.
Right, he'd have to move here. But another young man who's the head of their political action, whose name doesn't, come so I don't want everybody to think it's just all women,
Right.
but there's some strong men in that arena who can run as well.
Absolutely. 12th Suffolk State Representative Dan Cullinane had a challenge by Corey Allen. Dan, 67% of
That's
the vote.
a guy with the map of Ireland in his face.
I love Dan.
It's an
I
80%
love Dan.
minority
Yeah.
district, and he got 68% of the
I'm
vote.
going to tell you why.
Because he did the work.
Thank you.
Yeah.
He did the work.
He did
Yeah.
the work. Not only did he do the work, as soon as he hit the ground, he looked at those things that weren't happening, that because of whatever reason, and he made them happen in Mattapan and everywhere else. He had the mayor's support, big time, but he also had the community support.
And
Dan's
Linda
Linda
Dorsina-Forey.
Dorsina
Right.
Ford.
Yeah.
Dan's a great guy. He definitely had my support.
He's a hard worker.
Very hard work.
14th Suffolk State Representative Angelo Sciascia.
The dean.
Well, what happened?
Oh,
Did
no,
he
he's
win?
just, no,
Oh,
he's
yeah.
going to be on the ballot in
Oh,
November.
okay.
He's a
So,
Republican.
yeah, Anthony.
Who's a Republican?
Anthony Salamini is running
Yeah, I
against
think
him.
Angela will be okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, Angelo's
First elected 1972,
right.
year after me. Yeah.
But Angelo was great, so does a lot of work.
He says
so
exactly what he wants to at this point in his
I
life.
know. Well, and that's the beauty probably of being an older elected official, is that you don't have to worry about pleasing everybody all the time. You can say whatever it is you want,
Absolutely.
and that's it.
That's
And
Angelo.
you don't care what
He
they say
voted
back.
against repealing the high-tech tax when that was a big issue. He's the only one voted against it.
I know it.
He says, why should we repeal the tax? We need the money. And he sat
I
down.
know.
Right.
Good for him.
Exactly.
Good for him.
Saying
Just
exactly
mentor
what's
some
on his
people to
mind.
He's
come
the
along,
Italian
guy.
with a brain. We got to
Yeah.
have more of them in politics.
Absolutely. Another Italian on the ballot, 19th Suffolk State Representative, of course, Bob DeLeo.
Of course.
And
He'll be fine.
that's right.
Yeah.
He'll be facing off against Paul Caruccio, another Italian. But as you mentioned, Bob DeLeo will be fine. Any last thoughts about what you think? Joyce, I'll turn it to you first. Who do you think is going to win the governor's race in November? Which is really in a short time period. 8 weeks?
I'm going to tell you, it's hard for me to tell. I know that the stars say it's Martha. I'm just not so sure. I think what we saw in this race were some fissures that people saw from, her run against Scott Brown, who, by the way, of course, won up in New Hampshire by a huge.
He's a lot more conservative though, up in New
I
Hampshire
know
than he was down here.
Did you notice that?
I listened to some of his speech.
Oh my God! And Jean Shaheen, I think she'll pull it out in the end, but I don't know because the guy is, he's pretty good with, But I can't really say. I really can't. I know you're
I
going to
think
be
it's
the
a jump
Democrat.
ball.
You too.
I mean,
Good.
I'm a Democrat. Charlie Baker has said many times publicly that he voted for me when I ran for mayor. I
sure did.
appreciate that. Charlie Baker is a good guy. This is not
Good
some
guy.
Tea Party Republican. It'll be, I think, a 3 to 5 point fight. I think it's really close.
I think it's going to be close as well. That's why I can't
as
say.
Democrats, we have to rally around Martha Coakley. We have to raise a lot
As
of money
independents,
quickly.
we don't.
As Democrats, we have to rally around Martha Coakley, raise money quickly to position her to be even with Charlie in the money. But as I said, that Republican ticket is balanced geographically and ethnically. That is worth something, even in the current era when a lot of the old issues don't mean as much, they still mean a little something. The good news is, as this state has evolved, gay rights is yesterday's issue. To
Right.
my children, to our children, it's not an issue.
That's right,
And
it
that's
isn't.
obvious when you have 2 gay candidates on the ballot.
Absolutely. Casino issue could be something, though, that draws a lot of attention.
It could.
It will. Well, because it's on the ballot in November. It absolutely is going to be front and center
Yep.
in this race.
So both candidates are going to have to really be thinking hard about what they're saying about casinos as they move forward. Whether or not they've already come out previously or not, they still need to be
They
very
will be
aware.
positioned on all the referendum questions.
Yep,
And the other
absolutely.
thing is, just come up with something new and different that excites the electorate, because they won't come out. I mean, they'll look at it as all the same and what's in it for me, and nobody will come out.
Absolutely. Well, I want to thank you both for being here tonight.
Thank
Great
you.
fun.
Pleasure talking about all this election stuff, and don't forget to go out and vote in November. You still have time, if you're not registered, to go to your city hall and register to vote November 4th. Have a good night.